I'm going to start with the headset bearings because they're probably the most important part in regards to safety and how the frame is connected to the forks. It's pretty important. There's two bearings that sit at the top and the bottom of the headset. I'm going to focus on non-threaded headset systems because they're the most common these days. If you want, I can put a link in the description to a website that goes into headsets in a lot more detail than what I do now. There is a threaded headset system, but as I say, it's very uncommon these days, especially in the type of bikes for adventure riding. We're just going to stick to the non-threaded type. So you have the frame, you have the fork, so you just need to figure out what type of headset bearings that you need. There is external headset bearings and internal headset bearings, also integrated / internal headset bearings. The different sizes. The bearings in your headset will have two functions, and that's to keep the fork rigid to the frame, and also to allow the fork obviously to rotate in the frame. The bottom bearing takes the brunt of the forces, so that's why sometimes you might see that bearing is a little bit bigger than the top, because it wants to move more as say if the wheel hits a bump. It's going to hit that bottom bearing a lot more than the top. The more force will go through the bottom one. So that's why you may see some headsets with bigger bottom bearings. These bikes will normally have a tapered headset and are said to increase stiffness. To tell you the truth, it's been that long since I rode a bike with a tapered headset, or sorry, a standard headset, that I can't really comment. I haven't found a big difference going from a standard to a tapered. Now, saying that, I'm not an extreme cyclist, so maybe if you're into more the heavy duty stuff, like downhill cycling, maybe it could be better for you then. But I'm not too sure how better it is for just road cycling or adventure riding. Saying that, I do know another cyclist that went from a tapered headset down to a standard headset, and he commented that it feels more comfortable, that it's not as stiff, but that's good because that stiffness isn't, the vibration from the road is not then going up into his hands. So it's probably better if it's not so stiff then. And anyway, this is probably already chose for you by the frame and fork that you've already chose. You just need to know what bearings to get then to fit that frame and fork. It's really simple enough. You can either get on to the manufacturers of the frame that you got, and they'll recommend what size to get, whether it be tapered or not. So my advice is just to do that. I say the frame that I got, I did just that, and I actually allowed them to install the headset bearings, so you don't really have to worry about that. It'd be a good idea to do something like that yourself. As for different brands, yeah, like you've got Chris King, you've got Hope, you've got Richie, so there's hundreds of other smaller brands as well. Quality wise, Hope is probably my favourite. Not saying it's the best, but I haven't found any better. Headsets tend to last an awful long time. What do I have in this one? I have FSA, this is my mountain bike, and this one, thousands of kilometers, no issue. Same with all my bikes, I've never had a real issue with headset bearings. Next part of the headset system you should consider is star nut and compression plug. Star nut is the part you put down into your fork steerer. For aluminium fork steerers, I recommend getting a star nut. The star nut is pushed down into the fork steerer a certain depth, and it has to be right on center, so I recommend using the proper tool for that if you have an aluminium steerer. It's for tensioning to tension your fork when you're putting them all your fork together with your handlebars. I'll do a video on how to do that whenever I'm actually putting my bike together. You'll be able to see how that's done. Although I will not be using a star nut because my forks are carbon and the fork steerer is carbon. So if you're going to use a star nut on that, it can damage it with the vibration. The steel and carbon wouldn't be good for it. It could fail. And not only that, when you put the stem over the fork steerer, when you tighten the stem could actually crush, for lack of a better word, or deform the carbon steerer. So for carbon, there's something called a compression plug, and that's what I'll be using. Again, I'll show you when I'm putting my bike together. It slots into the steerer, and it's very easy, just slot it in. So when you try to tighten the stem onto the carbon fork, the carbon can't compress because the plug is inside it. And while we're talking about that, you have the headset cap. This is the cap that goes on top. This allows you to pre-tension the fork and onto the frame. So the type of cap you get, it's really is personal preference. And like once you have pre-tensioned and you tighten the stem onto this fork steerer, the cap isn't really needed. Some people, you could actually take it off, but then you'd be left with a big hole and it's unsightly. As I say, you don't really need it after the pre-tension has been done. Some people have a bit of fun with this and have personal messages on it. I'll show you one I got. I think it's pretty cool, but that's for a different video. Now we'll move on to the stem, and the biggest question for stem is stem length. God, every time people talk about stems, how long can you go and how low can you go? Stem length can really affect how the bike feels. So unless you have a frame that's either too small or too big for you, I'd really go with the recommended stem length from your bike manufacturer. Having a longer stem will make the steering slower and probably more accurate. A shorter stem will also do the opposite. It will cause you to have faster steering, but be a bit more jittery. But what I do like to say to some people when they ask me this is what I really want. Do they want a comfortable bike, or do they need a bike that will be more nimble? Now for adventure riding, you're going to need a comfortable bike. So what I'd say is always go with the manufacturer's settings. So for the bike I chose, an 80mm stem is what I need for my size of bike. Now I'm going to stick with that because these designers, they design the whole bike about how they want the bike to feel. Those reviews you read about the frame that you bought, they're based on stem lengths that the manufacturer recommends. So if you read a review of a great bike, then that review is based on the stem length that they recommend, obviously. So if you go and change that length, it's going to completely change the feel of how the bike is. So you may not get the benefits of what the review had said, if you know what I mean. So always go with the length that they recommend, unless you bought a wrong size of frame and you've got a long torso or whatever the bike fitter says, then that's different. But I would always try to get the length of stem that the manufacturer recommends. Never get a stem if you think it's just going to make you faster. Well, not for adventure riding anyway. You might get lower, you might be more aero, but after 100 kilometers, you'll be sat beside the road with a sore neck. You also have your materials to consider. Again, this will be down to your budget and preference. You've got aluminium, probably the most important affordable choice. We've got carbon, if you have a little extra cash, and then there's even titanium again, if you have a little extra cash. Carbon and titanium obviously have that absorption value, which might be nice for adventure riding. The clamping sizes for stems. Most fork steer tubes now are 1.8", but there are still some that are 1 inch, but so keep an eye out for it, but if you're not sure, it's probably 1.8". The other side of the stem, you need to be clamping onto the handlebars. Thankfully, the majority of brands have stuck to the same standard. There's 25.4 or 1 inch for mountain bikes and 26 or 25.8 for road bikes. However, there are oversized handlebars that are becoming more popular, especially in mountain bikes, and they're starting around at 31.8mm. Just, you're probably better to maybe buy the handlebars before you buy the stem, so you know what to get. So now you have your stem and your headset bearings and everything to put them together. The next, obviously most important thing is the actual handlebars themselves. Now, for adventure riding, I have seen people using straight bars, and it's just what they prefer. You can go that way too if you want, but for a majority of us, it's going to be the drop handlebars, so that's what I'm going to talk about. I recommend using drop handlebars because they give you much more positions to hold for your body to be in. So if you're stuck like this, or sorry, like that, for 10 hours a day, it's going to get quite stiff and parts of your arms. So with a drop handlebars, you can hold like this, you can go like that, down, you're allowed to be down over on the drops. There's a lot more positions there. And so that's why I recommend using drop handlebars for adventure riding. You're going to be on the bike a long time, so you don't want to be stuck in one place. When choosing handlebars, first major important decision is the handlebar width. Now, the best way to do this is probably to get someone to measure for you, but you need to measure from here to here on your shoulders, so you can feel in there the bone joint, the shoulder joint, sorry. So you get someone to measure from there to there. That's just the width of your shoulders, not the outsides, actually the joints. And this measurement across should be the same width as your handlebars, because you want to hold it straight down. Now, just be careful with some handlebar manufacturers. Most manufacturers measure from center to center to the bars in front of you. So if you're 42, say for 42 or 44 centimeters across, you get a 44 or 42 or 44 centimeter handlebar. Just be careful. There are manufacturers like Zip that measure from outside to outside of the handlebar. On these occasions, you have to add on 2 centimeters to the width of your shoulders. So if I'm 42, I'm going to buy a 44 handlebar on these occasions. Just have a look and see how the manufacturers actually measure their handlebars. And it's pretty important to get this right. If you're too wide, your shoulders will be out. Now this could obviously mess up your aerodynamics again to affect it, but it also gives more stresses on the shoulders than it should be. So it's also important to have the handlebars right in front of your shoulders. Obviously, you don't want them too short. Your hand will be harder because you'll have less leverage. Now, there are other angles and stuff on handlebars. Here's a set of handlebars. Just go through a few of the angles that are important. So we have, here's your width. So it should be the same width as our handlebars. We have the full width. So this is the width of the drops. So some handlebars, the width and the total width will be the same, but because I have flare and out sweep on this, which I'll get into in a second, the total width is wider. So this gives me more leverage on the handlebars, and especially on rough conditions or going downhill, I'll drop down into these, so it's because I'm wider then, and my handlebars will be able to throw around as much because I have more leverage because I'm wider. There's a thing called a handlebar taper. So obviously I was saying this is the part where the stem clamps onto. You just, as you can see, it tapers down onto different diameters for the handlebars, or for your hands. And this taper here, sometimes it's very close to where the stem is, and if that happens then it's very hard to clamp things onto it. And for adventure riding, just be careful there. You need to be able to clamp things onto it, such as lights and GPS and even trail bars. So just make sure you have that option where the tapered section is widened, so you have places to put whatever you need. Next, if you go on from that, you can see on this handlebar it has kind of flattened section there, so your hands are on a nice flattened section. But on that section, as you can see like this, there's what's called a back sweep. That's the angle where your hands go on the tops. It's not flat because if you look at your hand, if you look holding on to a flat handlebar, your knuckles are kind of, you're rotated in because you need to get flat. But on this one here, because the back sweep is on it, I'm able to be in a more natural position. That's the idea of the back sweep. Next you have flare. That's the angle of the drops out from the top. What this does, it actually, because it's flared out, you put your gears on here, and your brakes, that angles the hoods in. And for me, again, this is a more natural position than having these straight up. I'm going to be handling in a little bit more. Again, a more natural position. Back sweep, out sweep is much, it goes out at the back. Again, this just adds more of a natural position. Again, you're not straight on. That's a bit, because that would be less natural.